extend a very warm welcome to all our esteemed guests who have joined us for this momentous occasion, the inauguration of Center for Engineering Education Excellence, CEEE. May we request you to please be seated and put your mobile on the silent mode. The Indian National Academy of Engineering, established in 1987, is a society registered under the Societies Registration Act 1860, an autonomous professional body located at Technology Bhavan, New Delhi, and is dedicated to promoting engineering and technological excellence in India. INAE's activities include programs on the issues of technology, policy, and overall development for the benefit of the society, and the Academy promotes research projects, pilot studies, engineering education, fellowships, scholarships, awards, and other benefactions. Seminars, workshops, roundtables are conducted on the topics of current national importance. The actionable recommendations emanating from the deliberations are submitted to the concerned department and the government agencies to assist the formulation of national policies. INA comprises of India's most distinguished engineers, engineering scientists, and technologists from academia, industry, R&D, strategic sectors, and abroad, covering the entire spectrum of engineering disciplines who are elected as fellows and foreign fellows, respectively. The Academy presently has 998 Indian fellows and 107 foreign fellows from abroad who are elected in recognition of their personal achievements in engineering, which are of exceptional merit and distinctive eminence in new and developing field of technology. As the only engineering academy of the country, INA represents India at the International Council of Academies of Engineering and Technological Sciences, CEEE, which is a premier non-governmental international organization comprising of member academies from 33 countries across the world, with the objective of contributing to the advancement of science and technologies and promoting sustainable economic growth of all the nations. INA has been steered in the past by many eminent fellows as its president, like late Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam, former President of India, late Dr. K. Kasturirangan, former Chairman, Department of Space, Dr. Anil Kakotkar, former Chairman, Department of Atomic Energy, Professor P. Ramarao, former Secretary, DST, and other eminent engineering luminaries. To bring world-class opportunities to Indian education, the Indian National Academy of Engineering has envisioned a structured mentorship initiative, the Center for Engineering Education Excellence. This transformative program is designed to elevate teaching and learning in core engineering disciplines. To realize this vision, INE has partnered with the Infosys Foundation, a name synonymous with nation building through education and social impact. Further strengthening this initiative, All India Council for Technical Education, AICTE, committed to promoting quality in technical education, has joined hands with INA through a formal memorandum of association. The CEEE program will be hosted at regional centers established at 5 premier IITs, Kharagpur, Bombay, Madras, Kanpur, and Delhi, through dedicated memorandums of understanding, and INA is grateful to all the fellows and esteemed faculty members for these IITs and other highly acclaimed institutes of engineering who have volunteered to be the part of this program by rendering their valuable time and effort for this path-breaking program. INA looks forward to expanding this collaborative effort by partnering with more institutions of national importance in their near future. With this brief introduction, it is my distinct pleasure to commence this inaugural function by inviting our esteemed speaker, Professor Surendra Prasad, FNAE, former Director, IIT Delhi, to deliver the insightful talk on some thoughts on purposeful college education for the day. As the session chair, may I invite Mr. J.D. Patil, President INA, to please conduct the session. Thank you.
It is my proud privilege to welcome Professor Prasad. I think in IIT Delhi, he requires absolutely no introduction. An engineer who graduated 56 years back, finished his PhD 51 years back. So more than 5 decades of enormous amount of contribution that Professor Prasad made to engineering discipline, and of course in the subsequent years led the IIT as its director. So Professor Prasad's enormous amount of work that he did was in signal processing of different kind, and what we actually can see as part of that signal processing was what we call today as translational research. A lot of his work created hard products, and these products went into lots of strategic use, including defense and related areas. Not wanting to take your time away, than to listen to Dr. Prasad himself, I would welcome him. Primarily, we thought of someone as his kind to speak today, because for CEEE, when we are talking of where to position the engineering education, I think there's none better in terms of a speaker we could have found than call it a Bhishma Pitama in this domain, and that's Professor Prasad.
If it is okay, I can see this down. First of all, I offer my apologies for sitting and talking, not getting any younger, so perhaps I'm not taking a chance of creating some kind of a drama while standing for 45 minutes, so my apologies for that. And my sincere thanks to Mr. Patil for giving such a kind introduction, and also for inviting me for this talk here. So I think in a formal way I should say Mr. Patil, President of INAE, Manna Saab, ex-President, and Shantanu, Vice President, our Director, Rangan Banerjee, Fellows of the Academy, faculty members from the various institutions associated with this program, and young associates, fellows and associates, I think, of the Academy. Most importantly, the young teachers who have assembled here to the inaugural function of this CEEE program. If I'm not wrong, perhaps this is the inaugural function. So a warm welcome to all of you, and a very good afternoon to all of you. Again, I thank Mr. Patil for giving me this opportunity to speak to all of you on this occasion. So let me not beat around the bush and come straight to what I'm going to talk about. This is the title of what I'm going to say. Whether this title justifies what I'm going to speak or not, we'll see, and you will have to judge yourself. So basically, as Mr. Patil pointed out, I have been a teacher all my life, an academic. So therefore, I think it's appropriate for me to focus only on academic issues and not on other kind of issues. That's what I'm going to do. I would limit my domain of address to academic issues only. And I think if you talk of academic institutions, that is the main activity of an academic institution. That's a central business, I would say. Good teaching, good academics. Of course, academics means many things, but let's focus on the teaching aspect. So what I like to say is that if we can continue to provide sound education to our students, whatever else we may or may not be able to do, we would have succeeded in a significant way. So that's the basic point I'm going to focus on in this talk. And I'll share some random thoughts on these related issues and raise some questions, which all of us as academics must kind of ponder over from time to time. And usually these questions are not new, they will keep on cropping up again and again, and it may not be possible to provide answers in most cases, since for most of these questions there are no unique best answers. And right answers will be different in different contexts. So it will have to be evolved by faculty members largely, through collective application of mind, through various kinds of academic arrangements by which you engage in this kind of thinking process collectively. And the basic, there are 2 or 3 main topics on which I'll focus my attention. Because an academic institution is always having some educational objectives in front of it. In fact, that's where it starts. If you look at the accreditation system of any body like NB or anything, they start with educational objectives. So I'll first focus on the educational objectives, then make some brief comments on curriculum development and pedagogy, some remarks on outcomes, and lastly, some conclusions. But I must give you a warning. What I have to say, what I'm going to talk about, is going to be pretty ordinary stuff. Nothing, I don't know the right term for it, but nothing extraordinary. But I also believe that the biggest challenge always lies in the ordinary things that we do. Because it's so easy to get into the rut of whatever we are doing that we forget to look deeply at what we are doing. And that's based on my personal experience. I'm sure many of you can relate to that, because the routine of activities is so overpowering that you probably have not much time to think about other things. And I will therefore focus on issues that are basic and should concern all of us as academics. So let me start with educational objectives. And I'll start with a general remark on the universities. We believe, or we perceive universities or institutions like this as places of peace and harmony. Everybody involved in the subject of teaching and learning, that's the main activity. But as all of us perhaps know, that in reality they are very complex places. And they are complex because they serve different constituencies. And these constituencies, of course, we all know, there is a management or the boards, there is faculty members, there are students, and usually they have conflicting agendas, and that is the problem. So that creates a situation where some hard questions come up from time to time. And these questions are hard for good reasons. There are many possible reasons. Sometimes there is a lack of institutional will, because the institutions, sometimes there are institutions which could care less. I know that from personal experience. Unfortunately, that situation also exists in our country, although there are a large number of very good, fine institutions, but there are others which are not so bothered. There is sometimes the faculty indifference. Again, there will be faculty members who could care less on some of these matters. Or even if both these factors exist, there could be lack of resources. And that's a very big issue for some institutions. But more often, the difficulty comes from the fact that different constituencies that I was talking about, they have different values to address. And that is a very big source of conflict. And finding a neutral point of equilibrium between the contrary forces that drive the academics sometimes may be difficult. Not always, but at times it can be difficult. Of course, we all talk about scholarly excellence. That is our stated goal. There is hardly any institution which would not have that as a top of its agenda, that you want to go for excellence of all kinds. But the reality is slightly, I would say, excellence may be there, but it is associated or it emanates from the marketplace really. And the marketplace is different for different constituencies, for faculty, for students, and for research, and also for the research money market. So that's a reality in which we function. And whatever we want to do, we have to take care of that reality. There are academic discussions on teaching, curriculum, grading, student discipline. I mean, that's a usual things of which academics are made. And that's correct. That's how it should be. But if you talk about education, we all know, and you hear it every year whenever there is an alumni gathering of some kind, that what they hardly remember what they learned in the classroom. After 25 years when they meet for the Silver Jubilee in IIT Delhi, they hardly remember anything from the classroom. They sometimes don't even remember the teachers. But they remember a few teachers who probably made a difference to their lives. So education sometimes is, this is a very popular saying, is really what is left after all that you learned in the classroom is forgotten. Most of the time. Not every time. Of course, there are people whose foundation lies in the classroom, whose profession lies in that, and they probably remember their technical teachers very well, but that's how situation usually is. Let's consider even more basic question. I would say a larger question. And that is the question of defining the purpose of education. What is the purpose of education? That might sound like a silly question to ask in an audience like this, but I think it's important. If you were to define the fundamental purpose of, I'm mostly talking about undergraduate education here, not master level or PhD level education. So some of the answers that will come from our hearts will be like this, because when we bring in students, they're usually at the early teens, and when they go out of the college, they're adults. So one of the purposes to turn teens into adults. Other statements that are of a similar vein could be like this: to help them to grow up, to learn who they really are, to search for a larger purpose for their lives, and to leave college as better and hopefully wiser human beings, and to learn to lead a happy and fulfilling life. So I don't think they are very different from each other, but so these are some of the answers that you might come up with. And if you were to look at the underlying theme in all these statements that I made there, and that is the theme of wisdom, development of wisdom. It's a common element in all the themes that I mentioned there. Unfortunately, wisdom is something that is not easy to define or measure. And that's why if you go to any accreditation system, they will not talk about wisdom, because nobody knows what wisdom is. That's not easy to define and even more difficult to measure. But if you were to, for our purposes of discussion, to say something, we could say that it is the ability to investigate situations and experiences and carve out the right path for oneself and be of help to others in life. It's a very long, winding statement, but I think it makes sense. More succinctly, we could say that it is the ability to differentiate between what is skillful and what is not skillful. That's a practical dimension of wisdom. And if you go to the moral aspect, could also be what is wholesome and what is not wholesome. So, particularly when we are living our life either as an individual or as a professional or in a company, we have to make this choice between skillful and unskillful, between wholesome and unwholesome, when we need to make a decision, and we should be able to do that. So our students, when they are called upon to do this, make these decisions in their life, they should be able to do that. I mean, we are too focused on disseminating knowledge. Really, as teachers, that's what we do in our classroom. We are giving out knowledge of one kind or the other, which is important. It's not to say that that's not important. Sure, we need to offer them a very good professional curriculum. There's no question about it. We need to, for example, teach them how to, if they're civil engineers, design good and safe bridges, or develop drugs for healthcare, or be adept at financial management, or design rockets and satellites to explore the outer space. They're supposed to be doing all these things. We could teach them history, quantum physics, art, or what have you. The point I'm making is that while doing this, we should also try to see whether we are inculcating in them an ability to think for themselves. That's what we perhaps forget to do sometimes. Equally, if you do that, I think the factor of wisdom comes in automatically. And they should be able to, if they are wise, manage relationships in a harmonious atmosphere. All this is important, whether it's family life or professional life, any kind. We may not always succeed in doing these things because this is a much taller task than disseminating knowledge, but the point that is really being made here is that we must make an attempt. In whatever small way it's possible, we should make an attempt. So every decision that we take in the campus, let's say, be it the rules and regulations, be it the playgrounds of, or perhaps even setting up a new canteen somewhere, can we ask ourselves a question, what educational value can we add through that addition? And therefore, we also need to be wise so that we can inculcate wisdom. We need to be mindful that some things are important, more wholesome than others, and more skillful than others. Only then we'll be able to, through our example, be able to convey that message also to students. And of course, it should be done in a manner that is easy for them to imbibe. And that's important. That's development of wisdom. There is obviously no one way to do this. It's perhaps easier said than done most of the time. But we do need to work out ways that are suited and which will perhaps depend on our own situations. Perhaps the ideal environment in which this may be possible, and that's fortunately the case in many of the good institutions, is to have a very good peer group. Because a peer group really decides things for the young people. Because it is that peer group with opportunity for extensive interaction with both faculty and their own peers that things start to make a difference. The reason is that when you put so many bright young people together, they are all potentially at least agents of transformation for each other. And that's why peer group is very important. They shape others' personalities even as they shape their own personalities. Because when they come into the college, each of them comes with some valuable life talent of one kind or the other. And they get the question is, do they get ample opportunities to hone these talents further? Or learn things that they probably were never exposed to before? Are there opportunities for experiential learning? Because it is experiential learning through which they can develop the capacity to experience with greater sensitivity, which is a very important factor of wisdom. I would say, a key element. As I said, wisdom is something difficult to define, but at the same time, we all know that it's an intuitive, innate quality that every human being has. It's nothing very special that only some people have and others don't have. It's only that we need to provide opportunities for students to try to understand the external world with scientific temper and reasoning, and do the same with the internal worlds, with similar tools. So I think I've said enough on this theme now. So the broad message I like to leave here on this theme, on the theme of purposeful college education in terms of educational objectives, is this, that while we define our educational objectives, we should not forget this larger purpose of education. And that goes beyond curriculum and knowledge content, which is what we usually should be focusing on, but this factor is also to be something to be kept in mind. So that's the first point I wanted to make. Now let's talk a little bit about curriculum. And obviously the first question that will come up is, what is an ideal curriculum? Well, I will say that it's more than a rule book of requirements and regulations, because when the students come in, we give them a book. This is your curriculum, right? Look at it carefully. And that's really subjects that to be taught, the content of those subjects, and the rules they have to follow while living in the college. That's what they really know about. But really speaking, curriculum should express what a college truly believes in terms of education. That's what is important. And in some sense, I'm returning to the theme of the previous subject, because besides in-depth knowledge of professional subjects, there is a larger purpose that requires students to have an adequate opportunity to study the human condition together with their professional subjects. Why I'm repeating that here is, the wisdom factor, is because curriculum also to some extent can take care of this. Particularly, if you expose your students to subjects like humanities, social sciences, or other similar subjects, or maybe ethical practices. So it's important that students should be able to produce ethical responses to complex problems that they face in life, or they face in their professional life sometimes, many times in fact. If you can do that well, it will constitute a formal tool for the wisdom factor. Now the informal tool that I was mentioning earlier, in terms of peer groups and role models, but also as a formal tool. It's a very important wisdom factor in curriculum. Coming back to the content in general, it's generally hard to design content, because as I talked about constituencies, within the constituency of the faculty membership, there are so many different perceptions. And if you also add to them the market forces at work, it's a really hard task to designing content which everybody agrees on. Questions that come up: should the curriculum be broad? These are usual questions we come up with every time a curriculum is designed or revised. Should we teach a little of everything and something well? That's perhaps how you could define a broad curriculum. Should it offer a lot of choice? Should there be a limit of this on this choice, indicating perhaps a greater clarity of purpose? So all these and related questions are important, and we have to decide within ourselves which is the point that we would like to pursue. Of course, we'll all say that whatever it is, it has to be dynamic in content, and even more so in delivery, to adjust the needs of the class, to adjust the needs of the times that we are living in. Of course, it's much easier to be dynamic at the subject level than very frequently carrying out the revisions of the curriculum. That's much more elaborate and difficult. But anytime you attempt that, anytime you want to revise or modify the curriculum, usually what I have seen, and I'm sure many of you have seen that, there is a war of ideas about the purpose of the college. And at least I know about Senate meetings in IIT Delhi, how difficult they become when the agenda is of this kind. The reason is that, well, I'll come to the reason a little bit, but I think one general principle that we probably all try to follow and should follow when revising curriculum is two sound basic principles. And these are the principles that engineers usually use to solve problems. The first principle is that you should understand the problem, if there is a problem that you're trying to solve before you design a solution. And the second principle is don't change too many things at once. Because if you change too many things at once, you won't know whatever results have come, they have come from one change or the other change. So every curriculum revision exercise should ideally be incremental, should be small. And that's how curricula usually evolve. But sometimes in our enthusiasm, we make very widespread changes and we don't know what we are going to face after the changes have been made. Of course, the third principle is don't fix anything that doesn't need fixing, that we sometimes forget. So I was referring to this point earlier. In every revision, it's very difficult to prioritize any field of knowledge over any other. And the reason is very simple. There's a turf war among the faculty. There is ownership, very strong ownerships of fields by faculty and departments. So they would like to see their subjects being given importance and the other subjects can take a backseat. The compromise argument, of course, then comes up, let's give the students a lot of choice. And that finds acceptance, and that's usually what happens. I don't know whether it's still happening that way, but I'm telling my experience. And of course, add to this the fact in an institution like the IITs, there is a perceived tension between teaching and research aspirations. Although personally, I believe there should be no such tension. They really they help each other in more ways than one. If you are a good teacher, you are also a good researcher. If you are a good researcher, you know what is the state of the art and you can teach it well. But somehow there is this perceived tension, and probably it arises from various other factors which are probably spurious. So there are other questions. Will the curriculum respond to the desires of the students, the preferences of the faculty, or the educational needs of the society? Of course, we like to say that it should be a balance of everything. How do we design curriculum which is perceived to be beneficial by all, students, faculty, and society? Does such a curriculum exist at all? So these are the questions which come up. There are many other questions of this kind. And whenever you're doing a curriculum revision, we have all faced this question and will continue to face these questions. So that's the second message. What is the message here? Message here is that curriculum design is a very complex, multidimensional exercise and requires balancing perception of teachers, students, and society needs. The next factor I'll touch briefly is about inclusion and diversity. Now, if I was sitting in the USA, perhaps these will be topics I won't even touch upon. Namaste, sir. So let me continue. Our chief guest is here. The fundamental question that comes up here is, Should our students be the ones the professors most want to teach, or the ones whose education will most benefit society? That's the basic underlying question when we talk about inclusion and diversity. Of course, we all know the answer. There was a time, not long time ago, where college education was perceived to be a privilege of the elite in society. That's no longer the case. Today, it's the gateway by which the brightest and the most ambitious of the masses could rise in social and economic status. And the moment you try to do that, unfortunately, a whole lot of issues come up. First of all, as all of us have faced over the last decade or so, our student strength has increased enormously. So we have to cater to large classes. We have to learn how to handle them without disturbing the educational goals that we have at our hand. There is also the bigger factor of diversity within the class, competencies within the class. They're not all the same. There was a time when most of the students were coming as toppers, or very close to top, toppers from their respective schools. At least I'm talking of IITs. That's no longer the case even in IITs. There is a wide variety of competencies, and that diversity increases as you talk about diversity in general. And therefore, there are stress and tensions which arise out of these diversities, which you have to manage. There are student welfare issues. The curriculum design issues. How do we design a curriculum which takes into account a big class with very wide set of disparities in their competences? This is something that I think needs to be addressed, because even in IITs, I know that although we have increased our class sizes, we haven't really addressed this issue very properly. Maybe it has been done. I may be forgiven if I'm talking about old days. There are, of course, the diversity of student sensitivities. They come from different backgrounds. So that's a broad message in this short discussion that I had on inclusion and diversity, that as a society, we have to gear up ourselves to address the needs of a diverse class. Ensure that each student has an opportunity to learn to the best of his ability or her ability. Let me briefly, how am I doing on time? Another 10 minutes perhaps? Yeah. Let me spend some time on faculty-student contact and what we call advising, student advising. So this is where the divide between students and faculty shows most clearly, based on my experience. I think I learned most about most of these things in the short span of over 3 years when I was the Dean of Undergraduate Studies. And I learned from students firsthand, because unlike directors, I don't know about the current situation, directors mostly see good students. But Dean of Undergraduate Studies mostly see students who are not doing so well. So you come face to face with life as students actually face. So that's where the divide between students and faculty very clearly shows. And advising students in general is difficult. That all of us know, because they come from different backgrounds, they have different thought processes from our thought processes, and we need to recognize that and not lose patience with them. That's what generally happens sometimes. As far as students are concerned, they have rich academic opportunities in the college, but perhaps at that stage in their life, their talents and ambitions may not be clear even to themselves. They are groping, they are learning. That's what college is all about. On top of that, they may be coping with personal dilemmas, which are not very easy to separate from academic decisions they have to take. There may be family problems, there may be other kinds of issues that they are facing. So there are many forces that conspire to push students to feign confidence. They pretend that everything is fine, they are in control of their life, but actually they are not. Then their parents who have high and specific ambitions for their children, and that leads to reactions in young people. So the result is, and this is again my own observation, students keep busy with many activities. They just like to be busy. They like to distract themselves with one thing or the other. Right? Sometimes simply to avoid the uncomfortable question, am I heading where I want to go? They don't even know where they want to go, but sometimes they don't even ask this question. And of course, as far as distractions go, this is our most fantastic age for distractions. There are so many options available to students. Unfortunately, I mean, this is, again, I'm talking about personal more than general. Maybe you as professors are different from what I have seen or have been myself. We are poorly equipped to help students to sort out their lives. There is little special skills that we have in such matters. The general impression is that in universities, professors are the people who will guide students gently towards whatever they want to go, wherever they want to go. But the picture is very different from this ideal image. Professor guiding the student with wisdom and skill. I wish that was there, but that usually doesn't happen. So what can we do? I would say the desirable goal would be that we encourage faculty members to engage students in discussions. Because it is through discussions that a student also will understand her own interests better, his own interests better. Rather than telling them do this or don't do this, if we just spend some time talking to them, that helps a lot. We can talk to them again, we talk about ethical and moral guidance. This is not to be done by lecturing. Of course, there can be a course on ethical practices. That's a separate issue. That's a professional subject. But when you talk about ethics and ethical and moral guidance, it's a much wider issue that we're talking about. And again, through discussions, we can perhaps let them feel what is right and what is wrong, rather than us telling them what is right or what is wrong. And what I found personally is that one useful skill on the part of faculty members is a skill of listening. So as Dean of Undergraduate Studies, all I used to do was listen to the students and see if I could help here and there, but most of the time, listening used to be adequate. Because while they are talking about things, they also sometimes come up with their own solutions which you won't have been able to come up with. Unfortunately, teachers are enamored with one-way communication. Art of listening becomes a victim. And therefore, the message that I would like to leave here is, on the previous theme, I'd just like to quote a very small story that all of us perhaps have heard of about Mother Teresa. She was asked once, what does she say to God when she prays? She says that I say nothing, I just listen. The questioner insisted, okay, what does God say to you? He says, nothing, he just listens. So that's how the power of listening is so important. Now, I think time is limited, so I'll leave this theme on grading and evaluation and come to my concluding slide. Maybe you can, as I'm so I think I'll just leave the message of grading and evaluation. Because basically the point I was making in these slides is that we all think of grading as the most important thing. Students at least think so. And we have our own attitude towards grading based on wanting the students to work hard or wanting the best students to deliver their best. There are various kinds of factors that all of us have in our mind when we talk about grading. And we have our own attitudes towards grading. But really is the point I'm making here is that every teacher needs to think hard to use grading not as a tool for any of those things, but for students to learn better. So that it is not to become an absolute measure of what they are all about. If you are an A grader, you are great. If you are a B grader, you're not so great. If you're a C grader, you are even less so. That's not the point of grading. And I think that we must remember that. I think I'll have to skip all this. Sorry for that. Okay, I'd just like to end with this quote. This is a quotation from an author some of you would have heard about, Yuval Harari. He wrote 2 excellent books in about 2016, Homo sapiens and Homo Deus. If you haven't read them, I would strongly recommend that you read them. So this is a small quotation from, I think I'll just project it. You can read it yourself. There's no point for me to read it completely. The point is that we are living in an age, of course that quote is a very detailed one, and we may not agree entirely with its content, but there is little doubt that we are living in a very challenging age. And as we go to the rest of this century, these challenges are going to be more and more. Perhaps in a very short span of time, these challenges they're already appearing, but they'll appear even more so. So are we as a society ensuring that our young people are up to these challenges? As educators, we are duty bound to understand these challenges and prepare the minds of future generations to lead the human society in these circumstances. Harari's books are all about these changes. In fact, he gives a very panoramic view of the evolution of Homo sapiens from prehistorical times to today in a very panoramic way. So it's very educational. And in an equally panoramic way, he predicts what is likely to be the shape of the future. And the essence of what he's saying is that it will not be the technologies that we are familiar with that will decide whether a young person is successful or not, but whether or not you are able to deal with new fields of knowledge that will come up with, which will perhaps deal with more with designing intelligent algorithms, intelligent human beings or humanoids, and biotechnology, which will make a difference to human life in general. And I think I'm not doing justice to Harari by either that quote or this summary, but I'd like to leave it here. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
I extend my profound gratitude to our esteemed speaker, Professor Prasad, former director of IIT Delhi, and our fellow for his insightful and inspiring talk. May I request Mr. J.D. Patil to kindly felicitate Professor Prasad, please. Thank you, sir. It is with great pleasure that we now invite you to view a short film that presents the vision, mission and long-term aspirations of Center for Engineering Education Excellence. It highlights the Center's strategic initiatives aimed at fostering academic excellence enhancing pedagogical practices and nurturing a collaborative environment that empowers educators and students alike. Please join us in watching this short film.
India, the world's fourth largest economy, is on an ambitious journey to become Viksit Bharat by 2047. Powered by innovation, sustainability, and technology. Engineering lies at the heart of this vision, driving progress across sectors from infrastructure to defense, healthcare to digital. But the key question remains, are we preparing our engineers for the future? Over 1 million students entering engineering colleges every year across more than 3,000 institutions. Yet, many engineering colleges and institutions, especially at Tier 3 and 4 level, need to be enhanced to keep pace with evolving global standards and modern pedagogy and mentorship.
Since the number of students are very large, it was thought that we actually start training the teachers, the educators, and through that, the students that come out of engineering get enriched.
Founded in 1987, the Indian National Academy of Engineering is a professional body registered under the Societies Act of 1860 in New Delhi. It comprises the nation's most distinguished engineers, scientists, and technologists as its fellows, with nearly 1,000 Indian and 100 foreign fellows across every engineering discipline. This distinguished peer body is committed to advance engineering practices and promote excellence in education across the country.
INAE, AICT, and Infosys have come together to create something which is historic. And this historic aspect is about creating a center of engineering education excellence. Now, CEEE, as we call it, has been a kind of out-of-the-world thinking to bring in a very different dimension to our engineering students. Since the number of students are very large, it was thought that we actually start training the teachers, the educators,
To empower CEEE through an MOU signed on December 16, 2024. INAE is grateful to Infosys Foundation signing an MOU and allocating CSR funds for the program.
We are going to launch a national program aimed at empowering the engineering teachers. By empowering, what we mean is not just make them go through the same course once more or teach them or train them, but to take them to a level where from they'll be very confident to uncover the subject rather than covering the subject.
CEEE is a collaborative effort with support from the Infosys Foundation and also brings together the All India Council for Technical Education, AICTE, whose one of the objectives is to promote quality in technical education.
While INAE doing this is an important aspect because we have the right partner, what is the diamond or the jewel in the crown is AICTE also agreeing to work on this project together with INAE. That is what is going to make a big difference because the acceptance level will go spiraling high when AICTE is also there in the mix with INAs.
I appreciate the Indian National Academy of Engineering and Infosys Foundation for coming together to start a center for engineering education and excellence. The program will focus on fundamental courses in 5 engineering domains. This program is going to have a wholehearted support of AICTE and our esteemed IITs.
The program will be conducted through CEEE regional centers at IITs in Kharagpur, Bombay, Madras, Kanpur and Delhi. Established via MOUs with these premier institutions. The program focuses on 5 critical engineering domains: computer science and information technology, including data science and AI or ML, electrical, electronics and instrumentation, mechanical, aerospace and energy, materials, chemical and biotechnology, civil and environmental engineering.
The scope that CEEE has decided that yes, we'll approach the teachers, organize the teachers from all institutes, not only national institutes and IITs and NITs, but all institutes where most of the students go is very important, and there is a structure to it. There is an in-person interaction, there is an online interaction, there is a assignment, there are working in between for 2-3 months. This is very important.
This initiative of setting up of a Center of Engineering Education Excellence will create a lasting impact on the faculty.
This partnership is an important step forward towards this. So we are very proud to be part of this program and support it fully.
I hope that through this, where all of us are involved and we are talking to other faculty members, we too will reimagine and reignite the excitement that is there in many of us.
The CEEE program supports faculty from emerging institutions, particularly those with limited resources. Mentees receive full coverage of logistics and accommodation during in-person sessions, joint certification from INAE, AICTE and the host IIT, access to curated mentorship curriculum and teaching resources.
India's huge talent, and that talent is beyond the boundaries of so-called elite institutions. I think this also is a mechanism by which we are democratizing engineering education, engineering excellence, by taking it to more students by empowering teachers.
The mentorship model is hybrid and includes 2 weeks of in-person sessions at IITs in summer, followed by 3 weeks of virtual mentoring later in the year. Over 3 years, it aims to upskill 4,000 faculties with a wider impact through recorded lectures and open access resources. CEEE is not just a program. It's a national movement to reimagine the future of engineering education in India.
Teachers, after all, are the architects of the next generation of engineering talent. Fostering a culture of continuous improvement and excellence for the faculty members will directly benefit over 100,000 engineering college students and make them ready for the requisite skills and demands of the Indian industry.
Backed by Government of India's vision, supported by Infosys Foundation and driven by AICTE, leading IITs and top educators, CEEE is laying the foundation for a tech-driven Viksit Bharat, with INAE at the heart of this transformative journey.
Innovation, collaboration और modernization को focus करते हुए इस संस्थान ने भारत में टेक्नोलॉजिकल रिवॉल्यूशन की शुरुआत की है, मैं कह सकता हूँ, और यह निश्चित ही देश के बाकी संस्थानों के लिए यह अनुकरणीय है। साथियों, भारत को आत्मनिर्भर बनाने की इस पहल में इंडियन नेशनल एकेडमी ऑफ इंजीनियरिंग का बहुत बड़ा रोल रहा है और रहेगा।
We hope this presentation provided a deeper insight into the center's goal and the meaningful impact it aspires to create within the broader educational community. With the conclusion of this insightful presentation, it is my honor and privilege to invite our esteemed dignitaries to the dais. May I respectfully invite Mr. J.D. Patil, President of Indian National Academy of Engineering, and Professor Indranil Manna, immediate former President of INAE and National Coordinator of CEEE program, to kindly accompany our chief guest, Shri N.R. Narayana Murthy, Padma Vibhushan Awardee and Lifetime Achievement Laureate of INAE, FNAE, and founder Infosys, to the dais. I would also like to invite Ms. Manisha Sabu, Vice President Infosys, Head Infosys Foundation, Professor T.G. Sitaram, Chairman of AICT, Professor Rangan Banerjee, Director of IIT Delhi, Professor Santanu Chaudhary, Vice President Projects INA, and Professor Surinder Prasad, former Director of IIT Delhi, to kindly join us on the dais. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in extending a very warm welcome to all our chief guests and our dignitaries with resounding round of applause. Thank you. As a symbol of appreciation and reverence, I request Mr. J.D. Patil, President INA, to welcome our chief guest, Shri N.R. Narayana Murthy, by presenting a bouquet. Thank you, sir. As per the tradition, and to mark an auspicious beginning to today's proceedings, may I request the dignitaries on the dais to kindly proceed to light the ceremonial lamp.
जगत जननी शारदे जगत जननी शारदे है नमन तुमको सकल विद्या स्वामिनी तुम सकल विद्या स्वामिनी तुम वेद मूरत भगवती वेद मूरत भगवती दिव्य वीणा कर संझंकृत दिव्य वीणा कर संझंकृत शुद्ध बुद्ध विचार दे है नमन तुमको जगत जननी शारदे.
To formally introduce the Center for Engineering Education Excellence, CEEE program, I now request Professor Indranil Manna, National Coordinator of the CEEE initiative and immediate former President of INAE, to kindly address the gathering. Thank you, sir.
Esteemed Chief Guest, Mr. Narayana Murthy, Mr. J.D. Patil, President INAE, dignitaries on the dais, esteemed guests, friends. This is really a proud moment for all of us involved with the Center for Engineering Education and Excellence to be part of the inaugural session. Though technically speaking, the entire process already has begun. In fact, the first batch who are present here today, they already are about to complete their first 2 weeks of orientation and interaction in this very week. So this is a formal occasion. In India, we believe in certain rituals, so this is one of those. I would just like to share some of my thoughts as to why this CEEE was contemplated and realized. Friends, all of you would agree that the day mankind learned to turn a cave into a habitat or invented the wheel to add motion to life, the journey of engineering began. Engineering is all about finding solution to societal challenges and human aspirations. India is not only a large country with plenty of diversity, India also happens to be the largest and youngest population today. A country which until the early 18th century used to be regarded as one of the richest nations in the world, not by sheer wealth, but also because of wisdom, has a rightful ambition to emerge as a developed nation, in the words of the Honorable Prime Minister, Viksit Bharat, in the next few years, by the time we turn into 100 years from our independence. And the majority of the issues confronted by the nation today, whether it's energy, transportation, habitat, security, water, climate, majority of them are of engineering origin. And we are all aware that engineering doesn't spring up out of nowhere. Engineering essentially is an act of translation of the fundamentals into the application. We also are aware that engineering solutions are never unique. It always evolves with time. We live in a time when technology touches every facet of our life. If you look around, the way entertainments are designed today, the way sporting activities are conducted, medical treatments are implemented, even with DRDO chief sitting here, the warfares are designed today. Everywhere we see, technology has drastically changed the approach. And education is no exception. We are all aware, those who are in the profession, Professor Surendra Prasad did allude to that, digital platforms and various digital interventions really has changed the way education, particularly engineering and technological domain, has made a lot of difference. So India, despite having its huge population and the youngest population and regarded as a mighty economic force, the fourth or the fifth largest in the world, also has certain challenges which are undeniable in terms of certain indices and parameters, be it Human Development Index, per capita income, Global Innovation Index, gross enrollment ratio at the tertiary level. Now, all these challenges have to be addressed from the very bottom, from the fundamentals. So obviously, nobody wants to build an inverted pyramid. The growth model should be a regular pyramid. So we at Indian National Academy of Engineering decided that we should play a role in nation building at this crucial juncture. Out of 1,000 fellows from within the country and about another 100 from outside the country, 48% come from academia. So it's only natural that INAE should take this onus on itself. And that was a time when INAE also was faced with one of its biggest challenges in its history. But eventually, we told ourselves that if engineering is all about solution, then we have no business calling ourselves an Academy of Engineering if we cannot solve our own problem. So that gave us an additional input, impetus. We proposed something very unique. Unique not because we are talking about training the trainers, but because we try to address the entire gamut of engineering. To begin with, we decided to approach the entire engineering teaching fraternity into 5 specific domains. 5 domains, 5 centers of excellence, the 5 premier IITs, 5 center coordinators, 25 domain coordinators, 125 domain coordinators, 1,275 mentee teachers drawn from the AICTE governed institutions, all courses designed after the AICTE approved recipe. And in about 3 years, we target to bring 4,000 teachers teaching in various engineering colleges in the country under the gamut of this program. What we believe is that these mentees, mentored by the topmost professionals in the country, in the academia, would certainly be the catalyst for changing the culture of engineering education in the country. You would have heard that at the very beginning we declared that our intention is not to teach the same set of teachers who already have been taught. We want to bring them to a level where they'll inspire the next generation of engineering professionals. AICTE has more than 3,000 engineering institutions under its fold, but we know very well that there is a wide bandwidth in terms of the quality of education. Now, no student pays few lakhs of fees to enroll into engineering. No faculty member ever joins an institution to turn out to be a bad teacher. Circumstances, infrastructure, situations make all the difference. So it is for this reason we would like to combine the institutions which are not necessarily top tier with the mentors coming from the top tier, the most celebrated teachers, so that they gain not only confidence, they actually emerge to be the harbinger of changes of engineering education in the country. And in this whole journey, we'll be failing in our duty if we do not mention about not only a unique, but I must say, a never-before initiative and gesture coming from Infosys Foundation. I don't think we have heard many such examples where a corporate comes forward with the agreement to fund a project meant for training the teachers up to about 40 crore over a period of 3-4 years. On behalf of the Academy and on behalf of CEEE, I record our deepest appreciation to the leadership of Infosys Foundation and Infosys, CEO and the Chairman Infosys Foundation, Ms. Parikh, and his colleagues. We are glad Ms. Manisha Sabu is here representing Infosys Foundation. We are extremely grateful to all the mentors, very happy to have all the mentee teachers coming from various institutions, extremely grateful to Chairman AICTE, Professor Sitaram, to have readily agreed to sign an MOU with us. And the same applies to the 5 IIT directors, the topmost IITs in the country, who also came forward and joined hands. But last, not the least, we are extremely happy and we all feel actually blessed today to have the august presence of Mr. Narayana Murthy, who is the principal reason why we are able to take this initiative forward. We only hope that the initiative, very small, but eventually should turn out to be very big and major impactful for the country. Thank you very much. Jai Hind.
Thank you, sir. May I now request Ms. Manisha Sabu, Vice President, Infosys, Head Infosys Foundation, to kindly address the gathering. Thank you, ma'am.
Good evening, everybody. It was 1996. A middle-aged woman walked into a corporate office. The security was very respectful of her. She wanted to meet the management. She told management that I want to sell my shares in this company. So they asked her why. She said, I want to use that money to serve the community, to help poor and underprivileged. They said, how much money do you need? She mentioned 60 lakhs. They said, what if we give you this money? Will you help us to manage the CSR for the organization? She accepted to do that. The organization was Infosys. The lady was Mrs. Sudhamurthy Madam. And what I told you just now is how Infosys Foundation was born in 1996. What started with 60 lakhs at that point of time, today is 7th largest CSR organization in nation. With the top rank also comes big opportunity and big responsibility. So now we are focused on taking up large-scale projects which will move the needle, which will change the landscape in India. So we have embarked on one such flagship project which is related to education for employment. In last year, like the last financial year, FY25, in last 6 months of it, we provided we skilled youth so that 80,000 of them could get job. And we measure ourselves not on skilling, we measure ourselves on offer letters received. So 80,000 in 6 months is significant progress. However, the question we asked ourselves is that we are trying to work at the tail end. Why don't we do something where the actual need is? Many of us are engineers here, I think maybe most of us. So engineering is close to our heart. We know that there are 1.5 million engineers churned out in this country every year. I won't mention any numbers about how many of them are employed because I had the opportunity to talk to Sitaramji and he has told me that the numbers are quite a big spectrum. However, we all definitely feel the need for improving the quality of education through improving the quality of teachers. And so when INAE approached us for funds, my humble request to them was that, can you use this grant for designing a program for supporting the teachers? It's our responsibility to support them, to bring them up. And thankfully, they took my request seriously and designed a program, such a beautiful program, which is in-person, offline, cohort, mentorship, online resources. So they're making the whole new world open for the engineering teachers. So my thanks to INAE for launching this program. Also, my sincere thanks to the IITs who came forward to make this program strong, because when IIT is there with us, we feel much more confident. So thank you to all the 5 IIT directors. And as I already mentioned, the jewel in the crown is support from AICTE, because that will help us to make this mainstream if they can incentivize the teachers who are doing this particular certification. I noticed that we have mentors and mentee for the first batch here in the audience today. And so I would like to make a humble request to them that, you know, we are launching this program with lots of fanfare, with lots of ambition, aspiration, and dreams. You notice that almost who's who in the India engineering industry is here to support the program because we feel the need for it. However, the success of this program will majorly depend on how does the first batch fare. How does the first batch build upon whatever you learn during the 3 weeks and after the mentorship? If you make this transformation, if you really show it to the world that yes, this program has made a difference, that is when the movement will start. You are the engine, you are the first amongst equal. So please make the most of this opportunity, and I wish you all the best. I'll close with a quote from Helen Keller, which says, "Alone we can do so little, but together we can do so much." Let's work on this together. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam. May I now request Professor T.G. Sitharam, Chairman AICTE, to kindly address the gathering.
Good evening to everyone. Distinguished dignitaries on the dais, off the dais, and all the three partners, starting with Infosys Foundation, INAE, and all the 5 IITs and AICTE. Very good evening and namaskar to each one of you. It's an honor and privilege to be here today for the inaugural function of the first batch of the Center for Engineering, Education and Excellence. We heard very distinguished people before, where I'll start with the statement made by our President of the INAE, where to position engineering education in India. He started with a quote saying that, where do we go from here? But if you just look back from last 30, 40 years, we have produced engineering graduates to the whole world, not just for India. The numbers are mind-boggling, and we haven't seen any company without a graduate from India today. At the same time, definitely there is a lot to do further. I think this particular program of CEEE, a visionary program, I say, that I believe that will come as a cornerstone in the transformation of engineering education in our country. At the outset, I would like to extend my heartfelt gratitude and warm welcome to our chief guest, Shri Narayana Murthy ji, a visionary leader and an icon of Indian entrepreneurship and a fellow of the Indian National Academy of Engineering. Sir, your journey from founding Infosys to reshaping India's place in the global IT economy has inspired millions. Today, your gracious presence at this event is more than ceremonial. It is symbolic of excellence, of innovation, and of national service. Thank you for being here with us today. Thank you very much, sir. And this particular program, what we are offering jointly, also will certify all the teachers with a joint certification from AICTE, INAE, and all the 5 IITs. The logos will be on the certification. So this would definitely will take you to the next level and your position as an academic world. India, friends, today is not just a rising economy. We are already 4th largest economy in the world. It is a strong civilizational power. According to the most recent data from the International Monetary Fund, India has officially surpassed Japan to become the 4th largest economy with a GDP of 4.3 trillion. But if you look at any emerging economies, higher education plays an important role. And there, we are still at the rock bottom with 29% of the gross enrollment ratio. Friends, we are actually celebrating the 5th year of the National Education Policy 2020, which is a landmark policy centering around the students. And this is where this kind of programs will become very apt at the right time. So, while implementing the National Education Policy 2020, our focus is on faculty development, and that's where AICTE has put in a lot of effort in preparing the future generation of teachers with experiential learning. And we also included now through the NEP self-learning, collaborative learning, experiential learning to do hands-on experiences, experiments in their colleges. So what we have seen so far in India in the last few years, maybe 5 to 6 years, a rapid ascent in the startups and entrepreneurial culture of Indian engineering, particularly engineering students. Vibrant and diverse startup ecosystem. We are the 3rd largest startup ecosystem in the world today with more than 160,000 startups. Wherein that, we are clearly the mindset of the students are also changing. So while teachers who are here, not only to how to teach the fundamentals, but also you should take up the new world order, like the new generation of technologies which are being now disrupting the whole world, whether it is artificial intelligence, cyber security. That's where I requested the Honorable President and also the past President, immediate past President of INAE, we should teach AI and other related topics to all these teachers as well. So they have kindly accepted to be including that new advanced courses are part of this program, which would be very, I think, welcome step. Thank you very much. Friends, this is where this CEEE program steps in as a transformational model, I'll say. I want to take a moment to appreciate the Indian National Academy of Engineering and the Infosys Foundation for taking this path-breaking initiative wherein our Tier 3 and Tier 4 institutions have now an opportunity to train the teachers. But after saying that, a lot of our Tier 2 and 3 graduates have done phenomenally well for the nation building. Whether today, the Secretary DRDO is here, you could ask him, majority of his employees, scientists, either in space, ISRO, DRDO, BARC, or even in digital public infrastructure development for our nation, all of them belong to second and third grade engineering colleges, their first degree. Even I would like to go one step ahead and say most of my IIT faculty, if you ask them, where did you graduate? They will start with the master's degree. I did my MTech from IIT Madras, PhD from Harvard, postdoc from Cornell. But I have to repeat the question again to them, saying that where did you graduate? So they don't want to even identify their college where they graduated. So what I would like to tell the teachers today is, friends, please note, many very successful people have come from that bottom colleges. Including many of us who are sitting here. Not many from IITs. So I appeal to the teachers. When you approach these students, be humble. There is a lot of talent in the rural part of India. It's an opportunity, takes them to the top. So I appeal to you, apart from learning fundamentals and applications, you also to give out something very unique to them. So as chairman of AICTE, let me assure that we will be fully committed to this cause of training the teachers for the next generation of students. So over the last few years, AICTE has implemented several reforms in the curriculum, including we brought in a minor degree curriculum in quantum technologies, semiconductors, and space technologies, and defense technologies will be launched within a week's time. And then very new thing is atomic energy technologies. First time ever they stepped out of BARC and HBNI. They have come to us to create a new model curriculum as a minor degree for BTech students who can take these courses at a very undergraduate level. So let me conclude. India's destiny will be determined not just by its economy, but by its quality of education, and particularly the higher education. We have a big goal. As per NEP 2020, by 2035, we want it to be a 50% GER. That's a big ask. Let me tell you, in 2001, we were at 11%. 2025, we were at 29%. That means we grew in last 25 years, 18% GER in higher education. But we want to grow in 10 years, 22%. That's a big challenge in front of us. How many universities are required, how many teachers are required, how many colleges are required. There are enough number of students getting into higher education. So this is the time we think we need to transform the way we teach, the way we communicate in the classrooms. Let us commit ourselves to ensure that every engineering classroom in the country is a launch pad for innovation, inclusion, and inspiration. For saying that, I think we need to move into also an entrepreneurial, student culture we need to develop. So together, let's do this engineering fraternity a stronger, a smarter, and a more sustainable India. Thank you very much. Namaskar. Jai Hind. Jai Bharat.
Thank you, sir. May I now invite Professor Rangan Banerjee, Director, IIT Delhi, to speak on this momentous occasion.
Thank you. Good afternoon. It's a great pleasure for IIT Delhi to be hosting this event. We are delighted to be partnering in this important initiative, and just look at the kind of partners. We have a foundation, Infosys Foundation. We have the INAE, we have the AICTE, we have all the 5 IITs, and we have all of you, the faculty members. So, I'd just like to say a few things on this occasion. The first thing is we are fresh out from a curriculum review, which has lasted over more than 2 years, several hours of discussions and arguments in Senate meetings, stakeholder interactions, students, faculty, alumni, industry, and from July of this year, we will have a completely revamped curriculum. The focus on our curriculum review has been to offer flexibility for the students, to offer hands-on learning, to ensure that every student of IIT Delhi has an exposure on artificial intelligence and on sustainability. Today happens to be the World Environment Day, and sustainability has to be a part of any of the curriculum. I was delighted to listen to Professor Surendra Prasad when he spoke about the challenges, and he said that we must see what are the problems that we are trying to address. And the 2 problems that we are trying to address today is, it is impossible, almost impossible to excite young students in the classroom today. They have a variety of different means of information, knowledge, video content. We have to excite them in different ways. That's the first challenge. And this is something which, as educators, all of us are grappling with, and we don't know the answers. We all have partial answers. The second challenge that we have is that the future is changing so drastically. And the nature of jobs and the nature of skill sets needed is something that we all, it's going to completely change. And we need to be able to provide our students to be future ready, where they can adapt, they can provide leadership, they can quickly look at different kinds of. So these are things where we really need to put our heads together. And I think when we talk in terms of, it's not about just the information, it's not just about the content, it's about the way in which we look at a problem, the way in which we can provide solutions, where we can provide as educators a competitive advantage to our industry, to our service organizations, to our society. And I think in doing that, we in the IITs were very happy to respond to this program, because one of the things that we have as a role is that we have to provide leadership of thought in terms of education, and what better way than to interface with the engineering educators, to try to provide inputs to them, to learn from our students, our engineering educators and our students, and together to figure out what are the ways in which we can make the challenges where we create the future generations with the skill sets which actually makes India Viksit Bharat. Thank you so much, and it's really an opportunity to be starting up on this journey. We at IIT Delhi are fully committed to this.
Thank you, sir. May I now request Mr. J.D. Patil, President INAE, to deliver the presidential address.
Mr. N.R. Narayana Murthy, Chief Guest for today, and a Fellow of the National Academy of Engineering. Dignitaries on the dais, off the dais, and the teachers from many colleges who are here for making difference to the future engineers who are going to be born. As INAE, you saw from the movie that we were founded in 1987, and what best at that point in time, the Prime Minister of this country decided to launch and inaugurate INAE, and that was the kind of positioning and importance that the nation allotted to creation of INAE. This is a body, we just heard that there are 1,000 fellows in India, 998 to be precise, and about 100 overseas. But this is an institution which essentially is a peer body. Only the best among the best get referred, and I must tell you, among them, 1 in 10 makes it to the fellowship. So this is not something which is a club to which you can apply, join, you pay more, you get in. Incidentally, there is no payouts, there is nothing involved in terms of this recognition of what is called the fellowship. Right from the day it was founded, 1995 onwards, government funded us. Completely 100% of INA's cost was borne by Government of India. Couple of years back, in keeping with times, the government felt that if we are dependent on government, our independent voice, which is the job that we do for last little more than 4 decades now, that the job of advising on where to position engineering, where to position new technologies, and contribute towards that for shaping the future of nation. If this is a job that we are required to be doing, and I must say also that look at any major committee that the government has put in place, by default, 50% of that committee typically would be the INAE fellows. So that's a level of thinking and positioning which INAE brings to the table, and thus the government felt you should be independent. If we are independent, completely autonomous on our own, maybe our ability to think and advise would be of a different kind and different class. And this was a challenge which Professor Manna right at the beginning talked about. And in this journey, we have had some amazing support from major corporates. Shri Narayana Murthy is seated here, and you just heard this program which is being run with a very, very different vision and a very different level of implementation that is just started about 10 days back with you all joining for this program. This is going to be running in the current format for 3 years, and thereafter, of course, the success will decide where we take it and how we take it forward. The second aspect of this positioning was how to get that sustenance. An enormous amount of support came out of major corporates. The Larsen Toubros, the Tatas, the Google Foundation, and 200 of our fellows very generously donated. And these donations have been put into a corpus, and the academy actually runs out of the earnings of those corpus. And that is to say, there's no charge for somebody who comes in, there's no charge for somebody who stays there, and that's essentially where we need somebody who comes on board. And this is essentially where I must say that Professor Manna and Murthy have had multiple discussions on this subject, and once he was convinced that something needs to be done, then he said, Professor Manna, to Manisha and Shri Virmani, and 2 of them, rather 3 of them together, created this kind of a model. Now, as we heard, this is historic. This is not done in the country ever, but I must say, in form of various types of contributions that INAE made, there have been multiple programs that INAE and AICTE has been running precisely for past 26 years. And some of them go back to 1999, and I must tell you the first of it is Distinguished Visiting Professor Scheme, wherein people of eminence are encouraged to go back to the institutions for the purpose of being a distinguished professor. Travel grant schemes for students to go overseas participate in international conferences and those kind of things, position India at the same time, do a lot in terms of what it takes to gain for the students international exposure, listen to thinkers all over the world. And that's another of the program which AICTE and INAE has been running. And the next on that has been the Teacher Research Fellowships. So teachers are being provided, not, of course your colleges pay you salary, but if you want to pursue some very serious research, there's a scheme under which there's a grant which INA used to provide. Post-COVID, of course, some of these are right now in some kind of a hibernation, and we are hopeful, like we are doing the CEEE, to position very differently some of these schemes gradually, as we become more and more independent, will come back in the form of what we'll provide. INAE as the apex, rather the only engineering body, academy in the country, does a lot, not only within the country, internationally. And it did get spoken about, the CATES, which is the academy, it's a council of all academies in the world, 34 of them come together every year, discuss and debate in terms of where to position, how to take engineering forward. This year happens to be one of those years. It's going to be conducted in Australia. It keeps rotating between different countries, and in positioning that, INAE has a very, very major role to play. Professor Manna was the chairman of the restructuring of the education, rather the curriculums in engineering. So this is something which what INAE does not only limits to within the country, but going out all across. As a part of INAE's major activities, just for the last one more minute, we do major events, and our calendar is normally quite packed. One of the things we do for all kind of engineers, professionals to come together is what we call an engineers conclave. This typically happens in the second quarter of the year, in the financial years. Then of course there's a NATFOI, which is a initiative which is to go to colleges and various organizations to bring in the entrepreneurial spirits and take the start sowing those seeds of entrepreneurialism right there. The annual convention, of course, happens end of the year in December, and in between, we are now positioning a technology conclave, which essentially would do a platform again for all kind of members and fellows to come together, debate on some specific themes. And in addition to that, there are many, many, many other activities that keep happening every year. This is an organization, as a result, as I said, is dedicated to the cause of engineering, and of course, towards that, we don't have words to express our gratitude to INAE Foundation, Mr. Narayana Murthy himself, and of course, the entire staff of the foundation to stand behind INAE at this kind of a time, and of course, create this kind of a historic initiative, as I said, unprecedented. And hopefully, this is something that starts making enormous difference, and the difference will be shown in terms of the first batch that you all are attending now. It will show up, and hopefully it spirals into something far larger to fuel that movement, or the spiraling movement, as we say, towards making India Viksit Bharat. Thank you. Jai Hind.
Thank you, sir. And now, the moment we have all been waiting for, the distinguished address by our chief guest, a pioneering force behind India's software revolution, Shri N.R. Narayana Murthy, FNAE and founder Infosys.
Professor Sitaram, Professor Patil, Professor Mana, the Director and Faculty of IIT Delhi, Ms. Manisha Sabu, other faculty members, and most importantly, the attendees of this impactful program. Before I go any further, let me make an admission. I used ChatGPT 4.0 to create a draft for my speech. However, if there are any mistakes, I own them. One of the important things that happened is, on an average, I take 25 to 30 hours to prepare a speech. In other words, at 8 hours a day, you are looking at 4 to 5 days. But when I used ChatGPT, when I gave it the requisite details, I just needed only 5 hours. Imagine the extraordinary power of technology. It improved my productivity by a factor of 5 to 6. Anyway, it is a privilege to speak to this distinguished audience today on a subject that has significant importance for our nation's future. That is the importance of quality in engineering, education, and research. I thank you for this opportunity. India stands at a pivotal moment in her developmental journey. We are a young nation, rich in talent and in ambition. But to transform our youthful exuberance into real progress for every Indian, the urban and the rural, the educated and the not so well educated, the rich and the poor, and the elite and the not so elite, we must invest in the quality and not just the quantity of our higher education in general and in engineering education and research in particular. China has done it. I will just quote verbatim what Shri Zakaria, a much respected American current events commentator of Indian origin, said just a few days ago. I quote him, "Consider the Nature Index." All of you know what Nature Index is, right? Nature magazine produces this index. Perhaps the most comprehensive guide to high quality research in the sciences. It tracks contribution to the world's leading academic journals. Its newest rankings show what scientists already knew. China is just leaping ahead. Of the top 10 academic institutions in the Nature Index, 9 are Chinese. There's only one American, that is Harvard. My parents and teachers taught me in my early years that I should learn even from those that I differ with. After all, verse 3 in chapter 9 of Bhagavad Gita also alludes to this value. Organized by our premier educational institutions, like the 5 virginal IITs, this initiative is about learning the best from everybody in the globe to become number 1 in STEM areas in the world. It is not just a training program. It is a national mission. It is a step towards transforming how engineering is taught, learned, used, improved, and lived, particularly in our Tier 2 and Tier 3 institutions. I didn't know there was a Tier 4 institution too, anyway, that serve as the backbone of India's higher education landscape. Therefore, I congratulate the Indian National Academy of Engineering, the AICTE, the IITs, and Infosys for partnering in the creation of the Center for Engineering Education Excellence, CEEE program. All of us here owe a note of immense gratitude to Professor Indraneel Mana, a visionary, for strategizing and starting this initiative, of course, with help from Infosys Foundation, Manisha Sabu, as she spoke. Engineering forms the foundation for a nation's economic progress in times of both peace and conflict. While science is about unraveling the secrets of nature, engineering is about applying scientific knowledge to make the world around us a better place to live. Engineering is at the heart of improving productivity, building smart cities, better buildings, and better roads. It's about providing better quality of life and facilities to our citizens. It is about producing better equipment for every sector of our nation's economy. It is about achieving climate control. It is about producing sustainable energy systems. It is about conquering space. It is about improving our defense capabilities. And it is about applying digital technologies for our betterment. Engineers invent, innovate, design, and produce the machinery of modern civilization. We must develop and nurture engineers who have curiosity, can think critically, question the status quo, recognize and solve problems we encounter in our daily life. This is the only way India can compete successfully in the global bazaar and improving our prosperity. India's higher education system is one of the largest in the world. Our engineering colleges, located in metropolitan hubs and in rural towns, produce vast numbers of engineering graduates every year. But as we all know, there is huge unemployment among our engineering graduates. This is primarily because our engineering education system just does not produce employable graduates. Not 100%, obviously. It is a large percentage, maybe 40 to 60%. That itself is a huge problem. Many of our Tier 2 and Tier 3 institutions are filled with dedicated, passionate educators. There are a lot of you here. But they often lack access to modern pedagogy, evolving industry standards, and research ecosystems. The standard of English must be improved in the case of many teachers. We all know that most of the engineering knowledge in the world is in English. The rapidly changing and the latest knowledge in the globally valued books and research papers is in English. Many of our institutions still grapple with outdated curricula, ill-prepared teachers, inability to speak and understand English by the students and teachers. You know, I have come across approximately, probably about at least maybe 150,000 people who joined Infosys as trainees. So I have enough data. I am not speaking just out of my hat. I have enough data, documented, everything is there. Anyway, too often we see a gap between what is taught and what the real world demands. The inequality in exposure and resources between institutions create a gap that affects not just institutions, but students, industries, and India's global competitiveness. This disconnect, my friends, must be addressed. Quantity without quality leads to unemployment, underemployment, low productivity, and wasted potential. As you all know, research is the soul of any academic ecosystem. Without cutting-edge research, education becomes static. Without application, most research work, leave aside a small blue sky research, but most research work becomes irrelevant. India needs a strong research ecosystems where engineering research is not limited to academic journals, but translated into solutions to real-world problems like clean water technologies, clean air technologies, renewable energy, good vaccines. All of you know that we have still not found a vaccine for chikungunya and dengue. Anyway, AI-powered healthcare, agricultural productivity, climate control, resilient infrastructure, and more. Countries that lead in innovation lead the global economy. Let us be very, very clear about it. There's enough data. Your charter, therefore, is to put India amongst them. We are in the era of the fourth industrial revolution, a time of rapid change driven by AI, by IoT, by quantum computing, and biotechnology or genomics. Our engineers must be future ready, equipped not just with technical knowledge, but also with adaptability and lifelong learning habits. Engineering education must evolve to include emerging technologies, sustainability, and social impact. This responsibility does not lie with just governments alone. Governments will fund and prioritize STEM education. However, I humbly request our bureaucrats and politicians to desist from interfering in running higher educational institutions. The industry must support R&D. Institutions must modernize pedagogy. This is a good example. This program is a good example of that. And of course, these wonderful IITs must help the tier 2 and tier 3 institutions through mentorship. Students must approach their education not just as a tool to get a job, but as a mission to solve problems and serve society. Money will always come. My mother always said, go after Saraswati, Lakshmi will follow you. It is said that a mediocre teacher gives a monologue, a good teacher explains, a superior teacher demonstrates and a great teacher inspires, unquote. Today, India does not need just good engineers. It needs inspired engineers who are creative, entrepreneurial, ethical, and socially conscious. To produce such engineers, we need inspiring teachers who are not just knowledgeable, but skilled in teaching, able to communicate well in English, exposed to globally acclaimed books, comfortable with research, and connected to real-world applications. You can indeed become transformational agents if you become such inspiring teachers, which is the objective of this program. Through these initiatives, IITs will provide their expertise to uplift institutions across the country by building bridges of knowledge, mentorship, and collaboration. You, the participants, are the carriers of that upliftment that should ripple through classrooms, laboratories, and eventually our society. This program is not just about learning techniques. It is about elevating mindsets. In addition to this impactful program, some of the other useful initiatives that you, the attendees of this program, can pursue to improve the quality of engineering education in India are: one, engineering is about converting scientific ideas into physical reality and to create new and improved physical inventions and innovations like buildings, rockets, electrical vehicles, computers, renewable energy equipment, just to name a few entities. Every one of these, my friends, is a project with thousands of tasks, with some tasks in the critical path. Your reputation as an engineer that depends on how good a team member or a team leader you are in completing every project that you take up on time, within budget, and with better than expected quality. Just the other day, Air Chief Marshal said, not one project that was given to the Indian industry by our defense forces was completed on time. Not one. That's what he said. Anyway, therefore, project management is an indispensable skill for your student. Please include project management as a mandatory subject for the students of every branch of engineering in their final year. Please ensure that your students assist the project manager of a project in your own locality and learn this important skill thoroughly. I am a great admirer of, and I am very respectful of Kannada, Hindi, English, and every one of the 22 languages recognized by our Constitution as of 2025. However, the reality is that most STEM research work, knowledge, and reporting of the STEM progress in the world, they're all in English. To be successful engineers, your students must interact with engineers from all over the world. Engineers of even the most developed nations from Europe have adopted English as a link language. I spent several years in Paris more than 50 years ago, and let me tell you, English was a language we all spoke in the office, not French. Outside we spoke French. Anyway, it is accepted all over the world that a good command over English is a necessary skill for a successful engineer. Therefore, transform those of your students who are poor communicators in English to those that can hold grammatically correct, heavy accent free, and unambiguous discussions with the best engineers in the world on global platforms in a universal language like English. To do so, you may want to have at least one course in English in each of the 8 semesters of the undergraduate degree and in each of the 4 semesters of the master's degree in engineering. This will help your students to learn to express their ideas orally and in writing correctly, clearly, concisely, and unambiguously in English. Move your focus from syllabus completion to conceptual understanding. Move away from rote teaching. Relate theory to understanding and solving problems by your students in the towns and cities where your college is located. Adopt open book examinations as much as possible, but at least in the core subjects of engineering. This will enhance independent thinking and problem-solving capabilities of our students. The reason is very simple. In life, when your students take up a job, every day they have to use open book examinations. All the information is there, and they have to find a solution. What a wonderful thing it will be if you started your students right from first year undergraduate degree with open book examinations. Work with IITs to provide your promising students an opportunity to take at least one course every semester offered in those institutions through a virtual medium like Zoom. Teach your students teamwork by creating opportunities to move from individual classrooms to collaborative networks of students and teachers across the country and, where feasible, across the world. Move from just monologue by you in the classroom to enthusiastic class participation by students. This will help your students to improve their curiosity, their critical and independent thinking, Socratic questioning, and problem solving. You may want to watch the 12 episodes of Professor Michael Sandel teaching philosophy to second-year undergraduate students at Harvard University on YouTube. This will help you appreciate the value of your interaction with your students. At least once a year, create a mechanism to enhance interaction between your students and their cohorts from the top 50 ranked engineering educational institutions in the developed world. The heads of the Tier 2 and Tier 3 engineering colleges must make it mandatory for every teacher in the college to earn some consulting fees every year from the local industry. This will improve the problem-solving mindset of their teachers. If your college can afford, send one teacher every semester from each department to credit a course as a student in a relevant subject at an IIT or at a top 50 globally ranked engineering educational institution. The cost could be reduced by using a virtual medium like Zoom. These teachers must take all the examinations of the course like a real student and must be evaluated by the teacher teaching that course in the host institution that provides the opportunity to your teacher. This will help your teachers understand learning from the perspective of a contemporary student. Make it compulsory for every teacher to obtain a year-long internship once in 5 years, as it happens in the developed world, in a local company of their own, of their specialization. This will help your teachers understand a major problem the company is grappling with, contribute to that solution, return to the college, and enhance the problem-solving capabilities of their students. Allocate a semester of the fourth year undergraduate students to identify and solve or improve some function of your own institution. For example, the computer science students may develop some of the information systems needed by your college. The civil engineering students can be given a project to strengthen a weak building or a dilapidated road on the campus. The passing of the students in this course should depend on the acceptance by you of the defense of the idea and the project plan to implement that idea by the student. Finally, remember that no student will become a successful professional unless he or she has competence and, more importantly, values. That's why when I founded Infosys, we adopted the byline, powered by intellect, driven by values. Anyway, values form the cultural foundation without which durable and fast economic growth of our country will not happen. One of the important attributes of a good value system is humility and not boasting about our own minor achievements. Professionals from other countries should praise you, not you yourself. Please demonstrate by your own example the importance of high aspiration, humility, civility, honesty, integrity, decency, courtesy, hard work, transparency, fairness, accountability, sacrifice, excellence, and discipline in your everyday interaction with your students. Friends, this program is more than just a faculty development initiative. It is a nation-building exercise. IITs have set the stage, but the true change will only come when each of you return to your institutions not only with new skills, but with a renewed purpose. Let's remember that education is not the filling of a pail, but the lighting of a fire. May this program ignite that fire in every one of you and through you in every student, in every classroom, and in every campus in our country. Thank you. Jai Hind.
Thank you, sir, for your profound and inspiring address. Your words will undoubtedly leave a lasting impact and serve as a source of inspiration for all. Before a formal vote of thanks, may I kindly invite all the dignitaries on the dais to please come forward and assemble at the front of the stage for group photograph. May I now request Professor Santanu Chaudhary, Vice President Projects INAE, to deliver the vote of thanks.
I think we have reached to the conclusion of a momentous occasion for INAE and this whole initiative of CEEE, which can make a transformational change in the engineering education in the country. And this is an occasion to really thank Mr. Narayana Murthy for his inspiring words and his support through Infosys Foundation
to actually initiate this kind of process which can change the landscape of engineering education and the consequential innovation ecosystem of the country. I think there are no words to thank him for his wisdom as well as his contribution to this initiative. It's also a pleasant duty to thank Professor T.G. Sitaram because of his time out of his busy schedule and addressing this concern. And it's very important that IITs, how IITs have participated, and also it's my duty to thank the directors of IITs, all the IITs who have participated in this. And more than that, I think it's a duty to thank Rangan for his extraordinary support and initiative to make this happen in a very nice way at IIT Delhi. Let me also thank Professor Surendra Prasad for his wisdom-centric talk about the students and about organizing education per se at an undergrad level. And everything has happened because of Infosys Foundation's contribution. And so a thanks are due to Ms. Sood for her initiative in this process. And more than everything, I think Professor Indranil Manna and Mr. Patil, they have made this happen and they deserve a huge thank you. And it's also this program would not be successful without contribution of mentors and all the mentees who are sitting here. I think they themselves will carry the spirit with them and make sure that this becomes a movement in the country. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. May I request all the eminent fellows, please to come on the dais for a group photograph. All the eminent fellows to please come on the stage for a group photograph with the chief guest, please. With that, we conclude the formal function.